Writing and sending quality newsletters as an author that results in loyal readers and sales is really, really hard. And I've gotten so many questions over the years like, how do you start it and where and how often should I send it and how long should it be and what should the content be about and how do I even get people to sign up in the first place? So we are going to do a deep dive on number one, do we really need a newsletter as an author? And the spoiler is yes, we do, but I will share more of like why that is and how important it is for us as authors. 2, how to start, and 3, where to start. 4, how to get people to sign up, aka your newsletter incentive. 5, the contents of a newsletter, like what to talk about and what not to talk about. And 6, the length. 7, the frequency. And 8, a few other tips and helpful advice that you might appreciate. All right, let's just get right into it. Why are newsletters important? You might already know this, but newsletters are your most powerful marketing tool. And the reason being is that number one, you control it versus social media and other platforms. You have no control over it. And a lot of people are like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I've definitely had people be like, you're over exaggerating. It's not a big deal. But I personally have seen a ton of people actually lose their accounts over the past few years. Not to mention there's been some blackouts. And what if, just picture this with me, what if you had a cover reveal or your release day and Instagram and Facebook both decide to shut down for the entire day again? How would you reach your readers and let them know, hey, by the way, my book is out? Yes, that would be a bummer, but you would still have your newsletter and a way to reach them. The second reason they're so incredibly valuable is because the people who sign up for these are your most loyal readers, your biggest fans, the people who actually really, really want to hear from you and buy your books. I would actually consider this one of my top 3 biggest book marketing tools. That's how important I view the newsletter as. It's a really big step to say yes to a newsletter, and not everyone is going to do that. And let me just get this out of the way before we go any further. That's okay. You don't want everyone to sign up for your newsletter. You want your most loyal readers, your biggest fans, the people who actually, again, will want to buy your book when you tell them about it. Those are the people that you're aiming to get on your newsletter list. All right, let's talk about how and where to start. We're just gonna merge these two together because the how is basically everything that's coming up in this video, and I promise I'm gonna go over the details of like how long and what do you talk about and all that kind of stuff. So I think for the most part here, I wanna focus on the logistics, AKA the where, like what mail provider do you use? Do you use your regular email? Not usually. Usually you have to work with, I think they usually call them a host or an email provider or something like that. Before I get into the where though, just really quick, going back to the how, I just really think it's important for you to know that there's no perfect beginning. The best way to learn is just by doing it and figuring out what you don't want it to be sometimes. And so how to start is right now or yesterday, one of those two, because that's what's going to help you in the long run. I've heard this said before, you'd rather make your mistakes with like 3 people watching you and get the mistakes out of the way then than you would with 300 or maybe 3,000 or even 30,000 people watching you and you waited to get the mistakes out of the way and start your email until you had that many people following you. It's a lot more embarrassing. So just start, okay? And now on to the where. Just a quick clarifier, I am not an expert on all the different providers out there, so I'm just gonna put a list on the screen of a few different places you can research and look into. The only one that I'm familiar with is the one that I started out using because it happened to come with my author website, and that is called Wix. And so Wix includes I think it's up to 5,000 people a month or 5,000 emails that you get to send out a month through their website, which is really nice. But I'm actually considering switching because it's really better for a smaller newsletter list, and then at a certain point you have to pay, which is honestly kind of true of most of these newsletter, I keep calling them newsletter lists. Are they called hosts or email platforms? But anyway, as you're researching all these different platforms, trying to figure out which one's the best fit for you, I think the biggest 2 things to consider are obviously the price and then the functionality, like how much you need to do and what you want to do with your newsletter. So there are some authors who only do 1 email to everyone who signs up, which would be someone like me. And then there's other authors who have multiple email lists. I have friends who do this, and they have, one for readers and one for writers. And I've seen authors separate their list even more, like here's one for just releases and just giveaways and I don't know what else. But those authors have different, again, I'm calling it hosts, a different host than me. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, the Wix platform does anything that high tech. It's just pretty much like 1 email list. And if you want to pick and choose, you can kind of sort people into groups if I really wanted to do that. And I know that there are some automations, which by the way, an automation just means that you have an automatic email set up to go out every time somebody triggers it, for example, by signing up for your newsletter. So I have an automation set up. Every time somebody signs up for my newsletter, they get an automatic email from me with some goodies that we'll talk about in a minute. But you can have like multiple automations and multiple landing pages for different things. And out of all these newsletters, you could have like an email host that actually juggles everything for you. So maybe you send people here for a free excerpt, and then here if they want writing tips, and then here, and they get put on all these different newsletters, and then you send out different newsletters to each of those lists. And if it sounds complicated, that's because it is. That's why I don't do it. I just do one list. So don't feel like you have to do that, but if you want to, you definitely can expand to that as you go on. But that's why what you need from your newsletter really plays a role in what you're going to pick to be your host. So say you just want something simple and you want it to be as cheap as possible. There's some great options out there. In fact, most of them, I'd say under 1,000, some even under 5,000 or 10,000 subscribers, you get it for free. That's a really good deal. And then others you have to pay right from the start. And I just personally don't like paying a huge amount for something with very little return. I personally wouldn't pay unless I had at least 1,000 subscribers. I'd rather have something free. And then keep in mind, bonus tip again, you can always switch your newsletter anytime you want because those are your emails. You're just using a host or a platform, or again, I don't know what word I want to call it, but they're just the tool. You still own all those emails, so you can always pick them up, carry them over to another host, and try something else if you need to. But if you're like me when I was starting out, you might be like, excuse me, Bethany, I first need to figure out how to get the newsletter subscribers before I can, you know, put them anywhere because I don't have any yet. And I was there. I get it. I remember that feeling. And honestly, you just got to dive in, okay? Because the only way that's going to change is by you actually setting up an email and starting to send it and letting your readers know. But I will say it's usually a trickle, so just be okay with that. But there is something that you can do to get people to sign up, and that is something called your newsletter incentive. And people also call this like your opt-in or your cookie or freebies or something like that. The point is, this is something that helps people get incentivized to sign up for your newsletter, because let's be real, we all get a lot of emails. It's a big obstacle of, I don't want another email in my inbox, I really don't want it. And so to get over that obstacle and get your readers to want to sign up, you create some sort of incentive. And this can change over time. You don't have to lock it in and it's there permanently forever and always. You can definitely change it over time. But some examples are, a short story is the most common one, and that's because it gives readers a sample of your writing to see if they like your writing style and would want to read your books, but it's not super long to write and you haven't published it anywhere. Maybe like a few thousand words, 5,000 to 10,000 at the most. Better yet, if it's also tied in to one of your books that is published or about to be published, so that it gives a reader a taste of the world that you're writing in and those characters. For example, on my newsletter, I have a short story for Gideon, who is one of the characters in the Stolen Kingdom series, and I really, really love his story. So I gave this short little, it's just slightly over 5,000 words, about 10 pages, and it's just a digital download that readers can have for free when they sign up for my newsletter. Another example is a bonus scene from, say, again, a book that you published or are about to publish. I would say usually one that's already published would make more sense there. Or the first few chapters of a book that you are writing currently or is about to come out. I think this is really especially valuable when the book's about to come out as a short-term incentive or long-term incentive after the book is out. I personally have the entire first half of the Stolen Kingdom series as a free download when people sign up for my newsletter, because I figure if they get that far, they're gonna buy the book. Any other sample of your writing in general would be awesome, or some sort of digital download. So for example, if you're like me, maybe you have also a writer audience, and so I also offer a download of my publishing timeline template along with a 22-page guide for how to fill that out. And so you could do something like a release checklist, which is something I want to do a video on soon, by the way. Or if you're not wanting it to be writing related because that's not who's following you, which is absolutely okay and awesome, probably better that way, honestly, then you could do something that's more targeted to your newsletter subscribers and what they enjoy. So for example, one of my favorite, most creative ones that I ever heard of was one of my patrons had, I think it was historical fiction, if I remember right, and so she created a newsletter incentive where you could download recipes from the book, which I thought was super cool. So that gives you an example of how the sky's the limit, and the more creative you can be and the more targeted to your readers that you can be, the better. Those are a few examples of more long-term long-term incentives, but I just want to point out that you can also do short-term incentives, which are things like a giveaway or a cover reveal, both of which I'm doing in my next newsletter. If you want to check it out, you can subscribe below, just a little plug there. But also, it's a really great example of how maybe just for this particular month, you want to give a shout out on social media and be like, hey guys, I'm doing a giveaway. Go sign up for my newsletter if you want to be a part of it. It's exclusive. Or, hey guys, go sign up for my newsletter because you're going to get to see the cover early before everyone else, which is what's happening with my cover and what I always do for my newsletter subscribers. Again, those are just a few examples, but you would be surprised how powerful they are in getting people to sign up for your newsletter. So now let's say they've signed up. What exactly do you write about? What content should go in the newsletter? This is seriously the biggest question I get, and it's so hard because it's kind of like being asked, how do you write a book? What should my book be about? It's like, it's going to be unique to you as the author, and it should have your voice and your writing style and your preferences. So I don't want to tell you to write exactly like I do, but I can say that there are some things that are really good and really common and awesome to include in a newsletter. And the first one, of course, is your books. Obviously, right? It should be obvious, but a lot of authors skip over this, including myself. There have been times when I'm like, feels weird, I don't know, and then I'm like, you know what? No. The whole point of this newsletter, the reason people signed up, is to find out about my books. Number one priority. So this could be things like what you're working on right now, little behind the scenes stories or what's going on, stuff about your characters. Maybe you share an excerpt or just a one-liner or something like that if you're comfortable. And then as you get closer to publishing, you're going to find that it gets more and more easy to share about the book because you'll be like, here it is on Goodreads, here's the pre-order, here's the cover reveal. Okay, now I have quotes for you. Do you want to sign up for my ARC team? Do you want this, this, this? Honestly, once you let yourself talk about your books and be excited about them, you will definitely have content to share. The second thing, I'm not going to call this content exactly, but how to include your content is make it personal. And by this, I don't mean you have to go really, really deep and share really hard things or very personal stories. It just means whatever you do choose to share, make it personal. So maybe I want to share about my dog Penny, and that's not like a really deep subject, but I can make it personal. I can share fun things, or my baby Zion, and tell you how he just turned 8 months and I'm so excited. His favorite thing to do is to scream at the top of his lungs in Target. He has 2 little bottom teeth. They're adorable. And he weighs over 20 pounds already. Like, wow. And that right there just lets you get to know me as a person. And so those kind of things, that personal element, can be really valuable for helping your readers get to know you. Third, I would say make it something your readers will enjoy. And another way of saying this that might be even more appropriate is to make sure you bring value. And by that, I mean, like, don't just put in random stuff. Don't make it boring. You know, take the time to actually edit it over. I never send out a first draft of my email because usually there's a bunch of fluff in there that I have to go back and delete and be like, they don't need to know that. I rambled on for way too long. So whether it's obvious value, like a giveaway or a cover reveal, or maybe something more subtle, like here's something I learned, here's something you might enjoy from the book, it doesn't matter. The point is to make it something your readers will enjoy. And my fourth tip might feel like the same tip, but actually it's a little bit different, and that is to focus on your readers. And again, it might sound like the same tip, but what I mean by this is don't think about what you want to hear, think about what they want to hear. So for example, you might want to talk about politics, but for most people that is extremely uncomfortable and we don't want that. So I would think about your readers and write about stuff that you know they would enjoy. Last but not least, just try things. It is seriously trial and error. Sometimes you can't figure out what you enjoy writing about until you've tried 5 other things and been like, yeah, no, I don't want to write about that. Let's try something else. So that's totally fine. Again, it's better to make a mistake early on than to hold yourself back with the perfectionism, and then when you finally have something where you're like, I think I want to try this, and it falls flat, you have like 10,000 people watching. Sorry I'm talking so fast. I just have a very limited window where I don't have Zion with me, and so I'm trying to make the most of it and get this video done for you guys. So let's move on to how long should your newsletter be? I tend to write really, really long newsletters, but that's not necessary at all, and there is no requirement for like this short or this long. I really think it's preference, and it's going to come down to your your writing style as well. In the end, just like with a book chapter, I think it comes down to it needs to be as long as it needs to be. I know that's an annoying answer though, so if you backpedal to what I just said a second ago about the value, I think that will help you determine if it should be included or not. So is this really necessary to include? If the email's getting really, really long, yeah, we could leave out this random story about something that isn't a big deal and focus on this stuff that has to get said. Or on the flip side, if it's super short, maybe that's fine. Or maybe you're like, well, I don't really have anything to say this month. Then don't just send a newsletter for the sake of sending it. Wait just a couple more weeks or whatever until you have some fun news or something fresh to share. And that leads to, well, how often should I send a newsletter then? As far as frequency, I think the most common that I've always seen is once a month, but you could obviously do every other month or every quarter or every week, or even occasionally, not often, but occasionally I've heard of authors who do like every single day, usually for a very short period, like maybe a week at the most. So I'll talk about what you can kind of keep in mind as far as your frequency in a second, but I think before I even touch on the why, I think the most important thing is that you are consistent. So whatever you pick, if it's once a month, show up once a month. It doesn't have to be like exactly every 30 days. I don't think it needs to be that crazy. But like if you're promising your readers, hey, I'm gonna show up monthly, then do it. So here's what you wanna consider when it comes to frequency. For the longer side of things, say you would rather do less often. How far out can you go before your readers start to forget you and forget that they signed up for your newsletter? For example, if you only send one newsletter a year, when you get back to it the next year, you're gonna have all these readers who are like, who are you? How did you get my email? I don't want this. And it's going to be very frustrating to them. So I personally think that monthly or at the most every other month is the farthest out that you wanna go. Otherwise you run the risk of, again, people being like, unsubscribe. On the flip side, you don't want to annoy your readers by just repeatedly showing up in their inbox, hello, hello, hello. Like that's frustrating. I know that I don't like getting a lot of emails, and I'm assuming that you guys don't love getting constant emails either. Maybe some people do. I don't know. But I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're gonna send more than once a month or maybe more than twice a month, then it better be a lot of value. It better be really, really interesting. And that's not to say that you can't sometimes do this, because there are instances where you'll be like, I have a lot to share, and you could send multiple emails in a month. Like for example, coming up on a release, I probably will want to be like, hey, we're 2 weeks out. Here's some fun, like maybe you can read the first chapter, and then on release day, here's the first 3 chapters. Go check it out. The book's out today. You know, like there's a lot of exciting stuff. I've also heard of authors who share a short story, for example, and so they might send it out 1 email a day for a week and send out 1,000 words at a time until the short story is done. And in that instance, it would be good to be faster because you don't want your reader to forget what they read the day before, right? So there are very rare occasions where multiple emails within a week would be okay, such as maybe when you first get your reader to sign up and you have more than 1 automation. You remember those are the things that automatically get sent out. So maybe you have an automation for day 1 that's like, welcome to my newsletter, here's who I am, and on day 2, I'm so excited you're here, I wanted to give you this freebie. Maybe a day 3, I probably wouldn't go past that because I can't think what else you would share, but those are just some examples. For me, I try to send monthly, and I do set a reminder on my calendar so I don't forget. And that's actually partly because of one other reason I haven't mentioned yet, which is my newsletter host resets every month. So if I don't use it, I don't get it to roll over to the next month and get to send 2. It's like, no, the next month I only have another 5,000 subscribers, so I can send to them on the 31st of a month and then again on the 1st the next month. And I haven't done that, but I could do that. You see what I'm saying? For me though, it always comes back to, do I have something valuable to share? So there are very rare months where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so incredibly overwhelmed, I'm just gonna skip a newsletter this month or push it out a week or 2. No problem. That's totally fine. And then there are other months like release months or cover reveal months where I'm so excited, I have so much to share, I have giveaways, and I just can't wait to send out an email and talk to you guys. So I occasionally send more emails, but now I have mentioned that I only have a limited number that I'm allowed to send per month. So now when I want to send out a second email per month, I have to pay for it, which is another reason that I might be moving my emails to a different host or platform or whatever. And you'll notice, like I just mentioned, you can do that. You can change providers. You can change how you send the newsletter. You can change the content. You can change how often you send it. You can change literally everything about it. So don't feel like you're locked into something. Just get started and start sending your newsletters out. And I promise it's going to be a slow and steady growth, but it's worth it. I also wanted to share 2 other pieces of newsletter advice that some of you have shared with me, and I've heard these before. So the first one is to check out a book called Newsletter Ninja. And I actually have read this. It was back when Zion was like 1 or 2 months old, and I had it on audiobook in the background on Scribd while I was feeding him and changing him and whatnot. So I don't think I fully soaked in all of it. I think I probably need to go back and read it again, but it really gives a lot more depth to this topic if you want to learn about automations and how to do multiple different newsletter lists and things like that. And so I definitely would recommend it if you want to know more than what I've shared in this video. And then the second tip, which I think is super valuable, is to go and sign up for other authors' newsletters. This is going to help you so much because you're going to actually just see newsletters in action and be like, oh, I really like how they shared, you know, their favorite things from that month. I've tried that before just for kicks and giggles after I saw another author do it, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And then I kind of forgot to do it again. So maybe I'll bring that back. But little things like that, you can be like, oh, I see how they talked about their book. I could share more than I realized. I'm gonna give that a shot and share this about my story. Maybe like 10 fun facts, or here's the genre, or here's a sneak peek at this. You know what I mean? Like, it will give you ideas and be a really fun launching place for you. Plus it supports other authors, which is always valuable. So if you want a place to start, I will link my newsletter below and you can always check it out. It's below all of my videos. And I think that's everything. Thank you for bearing with me while I talked super fast, and I will talk to you guys again very soon. Bye!
Then all of a sudden it became reality. Don't care about no gold, no one else to hit my phone up. None of that.